On a rainy night in New York, Jessica was putting on her wedding dress, her hands trembling. This 22-year-old woman, born deaf and working as a hospital cleaner, was about to marry a billionaire she had never met. A man who could neither speak nor see and had been in a deep coma for 2 years. Why? A word whispered in your ear. He probably won't wake up for a few months, but eventually you'll hear it. But when she kissed her husband's forehead after a forced ceremony in the hospital room, the impossible happened. The man's eyes moved for a moment. Was it a dream or reality? Now Jessica found herself in a maze. Suspicious deaths, secret diaries, notes hidden behind walls, and dangerous voices whispering silently. What if this comatose man is actually awake? What if Jessica is not just a pawn, but a savior? Sometimes love doesn't scream. It only whispers silently. To continue following this extraordinary story, subscribe to our channel, like the video, and share where you're watching it right now in the comments. As a light rain fell on New York City homes, Jessica, with trembling hands and eyes wide open like fortune-telling stones, wore the white wedding dress she hadn't chosen for the first time. The reflection in the mirror seemed to belong to someone else. This young woman, born deaf at 22 and working as a cleaner at the city hospital, was now going to be the wife of a man who couldn't speak, see, or get out of bed. In the temporary wedding hall set up in the hospital's VIP section, the billionaire, who had been in a deep coma for 2 years, was accompanied only by his family's lawyers, the hospital director who had convinced him to undergo a life-changing hearing surgery, and a foreign doctor who sealed the documents without looking him in the eye. Jessica could read the doctor's lips, but she didn't understand the words. "Do you accept this marriage?" She waited 2 seconds too long to answer, but a touch on her arm created pressure. She shook her head and cried silently. "This marriage must happen," whispered one of the lawyers. Thinking Jessica couldn't hear, he said to the other, "There's a clause in the billionaire's will that says, 'if I marry.' Otherwise, we'll lose millions of dollars." Jessica's throat tightened. An hour earlier, the hospital director, Mrs. Monica, had called her into her office and explained the situation. "You've been cleaning here for a year, Jessica. I've watched you. You're honest, hardworking, and you don't tell anyone anything. Because no one listens to you, right?" Then she smiled. "Just a few signatures. The billionaire won't wake up anyway. You'll hear it too, eventually." Now officially the billionaire's wife, Jessica held a pink hearing aid in her palm, but she hadn't yet found the courage to show it to the doctor. Whether it was a worthless imitation or a lie, later that night she rushed into room 705. He was there, motionless, intubated, his skin yellowed under the cold light. Her husband took his hand out of necessity, but when his tears fell onto the sheet and he kissed his forehead with an expression mixed with pity and rebellion, the impossible happened. The billionaire's eyes moved for a fraction of a second. Or was he dreaming? He recoiled in fear. Outside, the mansion's butler watched him on the security camera. "Just a twitch," he said, a slight smile playing on the corner of his mouth. As he returned to the room, the doctor noted that the brainstem reflexes were meaningless, but Jessica's eyes were locked on the billionaire's face. Everything around her was strangely silent. The electronic devices in the hospital room, the monotonous beeping of the life support unit. Jessica, in this golden cage made for her, was trying to remember a half-finished dream in her mind. A few weeks ago, while standing outside this room and sweeping the hospital corridors, someone was watching her inside. She hadn't believed it then, but now the maid, Mrs. Lucy, had entered and was speaking in Turkish. "Now that you're the billionaire's wife, pack your things tonight. We're going to the mansion in Istanbul tomorrow." Jessica looked at the billionaire with fear. Was that a tear on her face? Or was it just a trick of the damp air in the hospital room? She trembled as she signed the document Lucy handed her. While the lawyers whispered in a corner of the room, a pair of eyes watched them from the shadows. And only Jessica noticed her new husband's fingers moving slightly under the sheets. There was a question she wanted to ask but couldn't bring herself to voice. Jessica stifled the scream rising from her chest as she watched the raindrops in the hotel room. She felt as if she had sold her soul for the dream of the hearing surgery that had once made her want to dive into New York's nights. 2 hours later, a small note lay on the empty chair in the hospital room. It was written in delicate handwriting with words in English, French, and Spanish. Thank you for seeing me.
No one sees me when they look at me. Jessica would never see this note, but the same hand would touch her destiny in the days to come. The pen of a man in a coma would be the final cries of a soul drowning in dark waters in a silent room. As the rain intensified over New York, something else had begun. The story of a deaf girl who married a man in a coma is a story in which neither of them could ever hear or speak, yet somehow they would understand each other. As gray clouds drifted slowly over New York, a black Mercedes thought the St. Johnson mansion on the outskirts of New York couldn't hear it. But the young woman's sharp gaze followed its every move. The butler opened the door to a room on the second floor. "This is your room." The room was magnificently furnished. Gold-embroidered velvet curtains, Haraki carpets, hand-carved furniture. But Jessica noticed immediately. The room had no windows. There was only a small skylight in the ceiling. It was the non-opening kind. She could see the sky, but she couldn't reach it. "It will be brought to you. You need my permission to leave your room." She took Jessica's passport and phone out of her bag. "I'm keeping these for you. Electronic devices are not allowed in the mansion." It was a rule of the Sheikh family. Jessica tried to protest. "But how will I communicate without my phone?" Lucy replied with a fake smile. "You don't need to communicate with anyone here, Queen. All your needs will be met." When the door locked behind her, Jessica collapsed onto the bed. Tears streamed down her cheeks. The promises of the hospital director, Mrs. Lilia, rang in her ears. "The Sheikh probably won't survive more than a few months, but you'll hear about it for the rest of your life." Feeling a growing panic in her chest, she began to examine the room. Inside the large wardrobe were expensive dresses, unworn shoes, and a small crack in the back wall. When she stuck her fingers inside, she felt a piece of paper. When she pulled it out, an old photograph appeared. A young woman in her 30s stood in the arms of billionaire Johanson with a smiling face. There was a handwritten note behind it. "Dear Marlin forever," she thought. Who is this? Before Jessica could focus, there was a knock at the door. She quickly hid the photo under the bed. An elderly maid entered. She brought dinner on a tray: lamb pilaf, eggplant moussaka, and baklava. The woman's face was deeply wrinkled, and her eyes looked as if they had seen everything. "I'm Mercy," said the woman as she placed the tray on the table. "I've been working in this house for 40 years. She thanked Jessica. She walked toward the door. Then she suddenly stopped and whispered, "Be careful, Queen." Johnson's first wife, Mrs. Marlin, had died mysteriously 2 months before the coma. They said she had been poisoned. She paused. "You are in danger too. To continue the story, please follow and like, and let's chat in the comments. Take care."